Welcome back to the Eager to Please podcast. As you know, we've been talking this month about self-worth and finding your purpose. Joining me today is a woman I've gotten to know over the past few years who is extremely passionate about this topic because she's done some pretty deep work herself to figure it out. Not only do I consider her a treasured friend, but the more time we spend together, the more her story intrigues me. She's had an extremely interesting journey to finding the courage and means to make the changes she needed to make, and now she's devoted her life to helping others do the same. I am so happy my friend Cyndi Torres is here to share her thoughts with us. Cyndi, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Well, Natalie, I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. I'd love to start by sharing with our listeners how the two of us got connected. And from what I recall, it was at a writer's round at the 12 Keys Saloon, which was a local bar in Hermitage. And a mutual friend of ours, Nancy Decken, invited me to join the two of you since she needed a third person to join the round. Usually I'm not one for performing live, but when friends ask, I have a hard time saying no. But I'm so glad I did that night because who knows if we would have met otherwise. And then it wasn't too long after that Nancy hosted a songwriting retreat where I feel like you and I really had the chance to get to know each other because, as some of our listeners may or may not know, those retreats are super intimate, and it's really a time for us to share stories and to connect with the people you'll be writing with on a far deeper level than just, hey, how's it going? They're really special, actually, and sometimes those people become the people you love to write with most often. So yeah, that's the first time I recall our paths crossing.
The writer's retreat is the one that really sticks in my mind is getting to know each other and having those deeper conversations.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah. Well, I'm very, very excited for you to join us today. I know this is a topic that is near and dear to your heart. And so would love to start there and let our listeners know why this topic is so important to you.
Well, I had been, as a teenager, I had been to see a counselor, and at various times in my life I had seen a counselor, but I never really got what I was looking for from them. And what I was looking for was change in me. And that I just didn't seem to be able to change myself, and I wanted to change myself. I wanted to be different. And then in 2011, I found out my husband had been having an affair. We'd been married for 23 years.
Oh, gosh. I'm sorry.
It was really a shock. But as much as I'm learning, I'm realizing it shouldn't have been such a shock. But part of that denial, not being able to be in reality, is what we're going to be talking about, self-esteem and self-worth. But that period of my life, it just kind of blew up my world, and I was like, I have got to get some help. And so it's just started a long process of trying different things. I was seeing a counselor. My husband and I were seeing a marriage counselor. I will never forget this. Our couples counselor, I showed up once and my husband wasn't there. And she just looked at me and she said, well, you can't make someone come if they don't want to. And that was such a eye-opening realization. It's true. You cannot make anybody do anything that they do not want to do.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of that song, or I can't make you love me if you don't.
Exactly.
Oh, gosh. And as painful as that is to hear myself say, it's one of those realizations that I guess in the long term is better for you. So it sets you on the trajectory to put yourself back on track.
Exactly. It sets you free. And you don't really even realize you're not free before those moments. That is actually one of my very favorite songs of all time.
Is it? Oh,
it
nice.
Is.
Very, very cool. One of the things that I admire about you, Cyndi, I'm sure you're familiar with Bill O'Hanlon, but he has been a guest on the podcast. And one of his strategies, I think, that he's developed himself is something that he calls the 4 energies. And he talks about being blessed, blissed, dissed, and pissed, and how you can channel those feelings in each of those categories into something that is useful and serving other people. And that's what I feel like you have done with all of those emotions that you felt going through your divorce, you've kind of set into motion something that's bigger. You had a bigger purpose for going through that. And obviously at the time you didn't know what that was going to be, but I would love to talk about the discovery that you made when you were going through those changes and putting in the hard work to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this pain that's going to serve someone else?
Well, the first thing you have to do is survive it yourself. And that's the hardest thing. I started a support group for people affected by affairs. It was a great experience, and I'm glad I was able to do that. But hearing other people's pain would trigger my own pain. And so you're going back to week after week, and for 3 days, you're just completely unfunctioning in some ways because of other people's, well, you think it's other people's pain, but it's actually yours. And that happened for over and over. But I made a decision with that group that I wanted us to be better on the other side of this. And so I did a lot of reading, a lot of studying. And then somebody else took over the group because I felt like I was ready to go to the next level. And you'll understand this kind of the irony of this. My son, who was still living at home, my daughter had moved away as we were trying to work through this divorce. She ran. And so my son is still at home, and he's a minor, but he's a teenager. And I wanted him to go see a counselor. You know, we're always taking care of other people, right? Rather than more than ourselves. And so his counselor said, well, I want him to come to this conference, but because he's a minor, you're going to have to go. And it was a Theotherapy conference. And I had not heard of that, but I was like, okay, I'll go. Well, my son, after the conference, he's like, I'm not coming back to this. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I was looking for. So it was at that point that I realized I had never had a counselor tell me that how I was feeling and how I was dealing with things in my life and the world at large was really developed when I was a child. That all those coping mechanisms had developed really early on. And really, we don't understand this. We think we're making decisions as adults, but we're not. We're still on our early childhood programming. So once I understood that, it answered a lot of questions. My biggest question was, what is wrong with me? You know, that was always my biggest question. So now I could start asking the questions, well, what was wrong with my parents and how they treated me? I could start looking at it from that perspective. How, even though they were really good parents in many ways, in the ways that they were not so great or had some deficits, from their own story, affected me a lot, affected my self-esteem and my identity.
For sure. Yeah. I think everyone listening to this can relate to that. And it's not their fault, obviously, because they do the best they can, but it definitely is something that you pick up and carry with you as an adult.
Right.
And then you're left to figure out, okay, what's serving me well and what's not.
Yes. And it takes a lot of time to kind of tease that apart because there's the you that God created you to be. And if you think about a baby coming out, they're not defensive. They're not trying to hide anything. They're just, if they're sad, they're letting you know. If they're upset, they're letting you know. So all of these ways that we kind of hide our stuff from each other, and mostly we're hiding it from ourselves, our pain, our frustration, our anger. Those are all coping mechanisms that we've developed and we use them all the time in every situation, and we don't even know it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm curious, what was the catalyst for you to want to make the change in yourself? Because I feel like so many of us, myself included, you have to be prepared and ready to make hard changes before you can actually do them and before you can actually admit, okay, there's something that's off here. And I'm curious, what was it for you that you're like, okay, we need to change something, or I need to change something?
Well, like I said, I already knew, like I thought I was the problem. And I think sometimes I got labeled as the bad one in the family. So I think when you have that mentality early on, the troubled child, that you carry that. So then it's always this constant, well, what do I need to change? How can I be better? But I didn't know how to be better. And part of what I learned about myself is that I'm very reactive. Like whatever I'm feeling comes out in one way, shape, or form. And when I'm happy, it's great. When I'm not, when I'm depressed or angry or sad or jealous or fill in the blank, and that's coming out too. And the more those negative emotions are out, the more people run from you because they just don't know how to handle your emotions. And the truth is, you don't know how to handle your emotions. So it was really a deep dive to understand why there was so much anger. I grew up in church, but the church model really didn't lead me to think of God in a loving way. It was more like he was angry and I had to try to please him model. But I had done a lot of Bible study and I was realizing that's not who he is. And so as I started looking at scripture, I started going, oh, well, it says his kindness leads us to repentance. So if his kindness leads us to where we need to be, why would I think beating myself up would lead me to where I need to be? Mm-hmm. So that was really a huge aha, to stop beating myself up and to start seeing myself differently. Instead of seeing myself as a problem, seeing myself as wounded, mm-hmm. a hurt person. And that really helped a lot.
Yeah, that's a great way to flip what you're telling yourself. You know, the script that you tell yourself, like, oh, I'm the problem. It's because of me that XYZ happened, instead of I need to heal.
Yes, exactly. I teach classes on this topic, on this information, and I tell them it's like having a pimple that has no head. There's no way for it to get out, and it is so painful, but it seems like it's never going to go away. And the truth is, our emotional pain does not go away unless we deal with it.
Sad but true. And I feel like I'm learning that slowly but surely. But yes, absolutely, because the more you bury it, like you said, there's no escape. It just keeps getting pushed down. So in talking about self-worth and purpose for someone who has struggled with self-esteem, probably as long as you have, since childhood, how does one build up their self-worth and their identity? If you're not even aware that that's the problem to begin with, how does one begin to rebuild themselves so they start having these good feelings about themselves?
That's a great question. And I think it takes some time to recognize. You have to start digging. If you imagine, say you tell your story you have somebody you could talk to, and they react to it, and they're like, oh, that was terrible, how you grew up or certain events in your life. That's really helpful because typically we're like, that's our normal. Right. So then those things that are big that might have caused disruptions, then we can start seeing them differently. Or if you can imagine somebody else telling you that story, would you go, oh, that was no big deal. So really being able to look at your situations, the events in your life, how you were treated, what people said to you, because all of that's coming in, and you're making an assessment, and that's the hardest part for children. They're very egocentric, and it's all about them. So instead of being able to look at the situation and go, mom's just upset about work, or dad just had a rough day, the child takes it on as, I'm the problem. I need to be better. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times the children have no defense. Well, they don't have any defense against these things. So they're taking all of these things in, and then they're trying to, as they grow up, they're interacting with the world with these same things. So a lot of it is, I brought a list. It's from the 6 pillars of self-esteem, but it says high self-esteem is correlated to rationality, realism, intuitiveness, creativity, independence, flexibility, ability to manage change, willingness to admit and correct mistakes, benevolence, and cooperativeness. So if you feel like you fit in there, then you may have high self-esteem. Low self-esteem is correlated to irrationality, blindness to reality, rigidity, fear of new and unfamiliar, inappropriate conformity, or inappropriate rebelliousness. So sometimes we look at rebelliousness as, well, I'm just not going to do that. But it's a lot of what is driving it. If you're rebelling against something, then that something is still controlling you. And not even, we just think, oh, well, I'm just like that. But no, you weren't just like that. You became like that. Defensiveness, over-compliant, which is what your podcast is about, or over-controlling. Those two go hand in hand. And a lot of times couples, one is compliant and one is controlling. They go together a lot.
Oh, there's that control word again.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And fear of or hostility towards others, which is huge. Like, we might just say, I'm shy, right? But if you look at these things that you naturally or what you think you innately do, look at them deeper and go, oh, is there fear driving that?
There's a reason. Yeah.
There's always a reason.
Interesting.
The things that I like to remember is how people treat you is about them. This is one of my catchphrases that I use with my people. But how it affects you is all about you.
Love that.
Yeah, and it's true. People are going to treat you how they're going to treat you. But if I told you that the sky was purple, you wouldn't be mad. Because it's not.
Right.
Or at least it's not for you. Mm-hmm. But if I told you that I thought that was a really dumb idea, would that hurt you?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And again, it's because if you don't have a place for things to land, they won't. Because even though I might not like your idea, it doesn't mean it's a good or bad idea. But if you're trying to get value from my opinion of you, and you're holding my opinion higher than yours, then you're going to feel that deficit.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Oh my goodness. Well, another thing that resonated with me that you were just talking about was the notion of the child, how it's always egocentric and always about them. And I guess, in hindsight, I wonder if I didn't grow up until my 40s, because every time someone would do something mean, I would internalize that and be like, oh my God, they don't like me, or it's all about me, or, I say it jokingly now because, I have awareness, but man, did I feel so hurt and rejected when people were mean or did something that went against what I thought should have happened, because it wasn't about me. Maybe they were having a bad day and I didn't know about it, but I immediately flipped and said, they just don't like me, which is why they're treating me like this.
Exactly.
It's terrible.
And a lot of the eager to please behaviors come from trying to make sure people do like you,
yes.
and avoid the rejection that we're afraid that we deserve, or we at least expect.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, I'm just so glad that my eyes are open to that now, because, it's a work in progress. I'm not perfect. And I still have those notions of, man, what did I do to piss them off? But it's not about me most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is an ongoing thing. The great thing is, as you use this model about just really connecting with your younger self, understanding how you're feeling about things, and being able to look at it through a different lens. I think that really happens, or really helps. So, for example, I told you I was the bad one, but even from extended family, I heard I was the meanest kid in the family.
Yeah.
I know, it's shocking, right?
Yes.
But I felt like that. I felt like I was bad, and that I just couldn't seem to get good, right? And so...
What's wrong with you, Cyndi?
I know. But as I kind of looked at that, and I took it apart, and I looked at it logically, well, I had some boy cousins, and they were really mean. So I couldn't have been the meanest one in the family. And I was like, so what was it? And I realized it was, I ask questions. I ask questions a lot. I'm a very curious person, and I also process things out loud. So as a child, I was doing this. I was processing out loud, and I would ponder things, and I would wonder, and I'd ask questions. And what really helped me understand this was I have a child just like that. And when he would ask questions, I would start feeling on the hot seat, like I got to be able to come up, what's the answer to that? I don't know. And then I feel dumb because I had a dumb button. And so then I realized what my dad was feeling when he had all these questions that he couldn't answer. The truth was he didn't need to answer. I just needed to get it out. And if he could have just said, oh, that's a really good question, but he didn't know how to do that either.
Yeah.
So just realizing that it was my curiosity and my processing style that constituted the verbiage, the worst kid in the family. And then I could go, oh, well, I really love my curiosity. It served me well.
Oh, for sure. I was just going to say that's one of the things that has kept you growing in your own journey, is that you're curious about, well, what if I dive into this, or what if I go down this road, or whatever it is. And so you've learned so much along the way, and now you're able to share all of those good tips with others.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes we'll find, if we can start looking at these stories or these beliefs we have about ourselves, we are going to find treasures that we've discarded, things that we wanted to put away and not take in as part of us, and really find treasures within ourselves.
For sure. Well, not only that, but I feel like the more people are willing to share, that you learn you have commonalities, or, a common thread with other people. And you're like, oh yeah, I felt that way too. Well, good. Well, then this must be normal, because I'm not the only one that's feeling like that. So you don't feel so isolated.
Yes. And I found it only takes one person to be vulnerable in a group, and the others, they get the signal, and it's like, oh yeah, we can all be vulnerable. And
exactly.
It's beautiful.
It is. It really is. I know. I feel like for so long I was the one to put up the wall and never let people get to know me. But I'm like, what was that? That wasn't serving me very well, because I wasn't making true friendships. It was all very surface level. And not that you have to go and do that with everyone. I just had this conversation with my sister. She goes, I have, those people that I choose to let into my inner circle, which is great. But I feel like you do need those few people that you can go to and talk to about whatever.
I agree. And what I really have come to believe and come to practice is the more I don't reject myself, the more I partner with God's view of me, and I accept myself. It doesn't mean I like everything that I do, but at least I understand there's a reason behind it. And I look at the intentions of my heart. Was my intention in that situation, was it to do good? And if I can answer that, then however it ended up, I can be okay with myself. If it wasn't such a good attitude that I had going in, then I got some working in. Yeah, exactly.
What are some things that you feel have helped you find purpose over the years, aside from getting into your own therapy, personal therapy, and also being a counselor for other people?
Well, I think as I found more freedom doing my own work, and I wanted to help other people find freedom, because I think that is so natural, especially for women. Like, we're always looking, who else can I help? And I was doing the same work at the prison, women's prison in Nashville. But the door, and I wanted to take it to my church. I'm losing my story, but yeah, I was doing it at the jail. I've been doing it there for several years, and I wanted to bring it to my church and start offering classes there. And the door didn't open right away. But what I realized in that, it was like a year and a half, that I needed to grow more. And that's, I would say, for anybody, you're not going to have arrived. It's a journey. It's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
But you can only help people go as far as you've gone yourself. So it's got to be a deep dive, looking in, understanding who you are, what you turned into because of your circumstances, even what you like. What I found with women, especially working in the prison, that was eye-opening because I only worked with women. Mm-hmm. And they all have a lot of similar stories, a lot of abuse. But there was a book that one of the volunteers had written, and it took 10 inmates from the men's prison and 10 from the women's, and it just wrote about their story. Well, every woman's story had, like at the core, the hub of the story was a boyfriend, husband, some partner.
Significant other, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the men, that was never the hub. There was one man who had actually killed 2 different wives, and it had nothing to do, like his story about being there, even though he was there for that, had nothing to do with the wives. I found that fascinating.
That is interesting.
And so I was really I had seen that also in the support group, how women handle their husband having an affair, their significant other, versus how men handle it, totally different. So I was seeing a lot of difference in gender as far as how they handled things, how they even understood things from their perspective. So I really, I took that and I went to scripture, and I was really trying to understand that. And so after the fall, the curse for Adam was different. So Adam was created to work and guard the garden. That was his purpose and function. Eve's was to be a helpmeet, which is an equal and opposing force. So she's like a counterbalance. So the curse for Adam was that by the sweat of your brow, you will work all the days of your life. Well, that's what I saw when men whose significant other had an affair, they just worked harder. They went to work more and often, and they just worked because men find their identity in the work of their hands. That's kind of the curse for them. It's where they're functioning. It's also where they're cursed. Women, they're created to be a relationship partner to whoever. And it said, your desire will be for your husband, but he will rule over you. And really how they rule over us is because we find identity in relationship. That's what we were created for, and that's where our identity is. So then when our relationships break up, then we don't know who we are.
Gosh, you just took the question right out of my mouth. How do you keep your identity in a relationship if you don't know what your identity is?
You've got to find your identity.
Yeah.
You really do. And sometimes it goes back to basics, like, what color do I like?
I was just going to say, what do you like? Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
Sometimes it's really little things. I know through this work, my ex-husband and I have really had a good relationship through this, which is really helpful because I know things can end badly and they can be rough. But when you've got kids, it's the more calm everybody can be. This is the hard part. His actions about having an affair, that's not on me. That has nothing to do with me. That's his choice. But I could start looking at my contribution to the situation in the marriage, where I was controlling. I was trying to get him to change. And I brought my little sheet here. I'm going to call out some things. I love this. It's a picture of a brain, and it's got what I can and what I can't control.
Yes, I love this one too.
It's so good. So out of our control is the past, the future, the actions of others, the opinions of others, what happens around me, what other people think of me, the outcome of my efforts, and how others take care of themselves. So the more we can realize, especially in our relationships, when we're trying to get them to be something else, or when we're trying to get them to take care of themselves, or how they think and take care of us, right? Or how we want them to, we don't realize we're fighting a losing battle. So the only one who can really meet my needs, the only one who can really understand them is me in the first place. So then if I can communicate that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do it to my satisfaction. So I use this analogy of a well. Women, a lot of times, they're always taking water out of their well and giving it to others. But we're not taught, and we're not good to put into our own well. And so then when we are feeling drained and empty, and then somebody puts a thimbleful of water in it, and it's almost like an insult, because it's so little compared to what we need. And I see that over and over in the people in my own life, and then in the people I work with, because we keep looking out for people to meet our needs. And the truth is, you have to learn how to meet your needs. And we're not talking about meeting the needs of my coping mechanism. I could go on another whole podcast that self-care and taking care of your coping mechanisms are not the same thing. But learning how to really see yourself in those moments when you're feeling bad, when you're feeling depleted, recognizing, oh yeah, I'm overdoing. Recognizing when we do because we think we should do, and then when they don't appreciate it, we're mad at them, realizing they didn't ask us to do it in the first place. So that just starting to get things on your radar, like, oh, I'm mad at them, but that's not their fault. And then this is my other biggest thing. You train people how to treat you. So if you train somebody that you are their need meter, and then you get mad later on because they're looking at you to meet their needs, that's not on them. That's on you.
Guilty of that too. Yeah. All the stuff you're saying, Cyndi. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's actually kind of painful to confront that, because you're not doing it out of a place of malice. You're doing it because you're like, I feel like I thought that I was serving a need for someone, or being of service to someone, or helping someone out, and I wanted to be that person for people, and maybe they did not want that.
Yeah, it is painful, but I think that goes back to what we said, bringing kindness to yourself, like recognizing I was doing my best. I was really doing the best I can. And then realizing that you can't change the past, forgiving yourself, moving on. And the more you can do that for you, the more you can do it for other people.
Yeah, but I love this, what's out of my control, what's in my control. In fact, I have that taped on my refrigerator too. I can thank my mom for that one, because she sends me these little nuggets every once in a while. Thoughts to consider. But no, I love what you said about how you identify your self-worth in a relationship, and it's starting with yourself, like, what do you like? What do you need? And not searching for outward validation or someone else to fill that for you. You have to do that yourself.
You have to do that yourself. And as you do that, that's where your purpose comes. So you can't put the cart before the horse. You have to put the horse before the cart. So who am I? What do I like? What don't I like? Because knowing what you don't like is just as important, sometimes more important, as knowing what you like. What floats your boat? Sometimes we have ideas about this is what I should like. Start an understanding, do I really like that, or is that just something that I've been taught I should like? So as you figure these out and you start loving your life, and I went from tolerating my life to actually, I love my life.
That's awesome.
It really is. The things and the people in it, like my songwriting. So we were going to talk about identity. So I did want to bring this up about identity. For me, what I decided that I was going to find my identity, my innate worth in being created in God's image. To me, that was the foundation that I built everything else on. So instead of looking at the work of my hands or what I could come up with in my head, or service I could provide, or anything else, my looks, anything that else you could put on the table, because all of that is shifting sands. But if I could securely attach myself to the thought that I am created in God's image, that doesn't change. It doesn't mean I'm perfect, because I never will be. It doesn't mean that I'm anything other than a light bearer in this world. And the more I can give that to myself, the more I can give that to other people.
Absolutely.
I was able to take my identity out of my songwriting, and I think that that's such a huge thing, because we're putting our heart and our soul into these songs, and then when people reject them, it feels so painful. And I had been in town a long time riding this roller coaster of, yes, maybe, no. Well, I'm not going to tell you no, but I'm not going to tell you anything. Waiting.
Or maybe I'll tell you no 1,000 more times. But yeah.
No doubt. And really realizing that whatever gifts I have, whatever I have, God gave me in the first place. Music is such an amazing thing to be a part of. Just, being able to be creative. I think of God as a creator. I mean, he introduces himself as a creator. And I think we're innately creative. And I think that's such an important part of who we are. And it can be in so many areas, but where it's kind of concentrated for me is in music. But when I tied my identity in music, my performances had to be exacting. And when they weren't, I beat myself up. Mm-hmm. Not only that, but it kept me from being my real self on stage, because I have to present an image that I want you to like or that's acceptable so it meets my criteria of my identity. I hope that's making sense.
Oh, totally, 100%. Mm-hmm.
So if you guys can figure out what you're tying your identity to, recognizing that's kind of a losing game because things change, time change, culture changes. There's always going to be somebody who does it better than you, a different way than you. I mean, fill in the blank.
Yeah. All of that stuff resonates because of the perfectionism that I carried for so long and seeking the outside approval for so long. And I think it's all really tied in the same bucket, to be honest. And when, like you said, whenever you stop putting that pressure on yourself to be like, you know what, this is who I am. I'm just going to go up there and have fun. Yeah. And I'm not trying to check off anyone else's boxes. I'm up here for me, and I hope you enjoy my song, but...
That's so much freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is, yes. I don't know if you've ever heard of the theories of the 5 C's of self-esteem: competence, confidence, character, connection, and caring.
I had not heard of those, but I think they're beneficial. Mm-hmm. Really.
And all interrelated kind of, probably,
yes,
too.
Exactly. What we lost as children, whether we understand it or not, is trust. So if we cried and our parent met our needs sometimes, and sometimes they didn't know how to, what we lost is trust in ourselves and in others. And so when I look at that word competence, learning to trust yourself, learning to look at your history. Oh, well, I've handled things like this before, or I've overcome things before. That can really help you instead of feeling like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. But the more and again, this comes back to your identity, finding your identity in the creator God, who everything you see and everything you don't see, he created. He brought forth initially from his mind. And so the same attributes that he has, we have as well. That means whatever we need to come out, we can make that happen in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. It may not look like what you think it's going to. And I think when you mentioned perfectionism, I was going to talk about that, because I find a lot of people are perfectionists. A lot of times people who are procrastinators, they're unaware of perfectionists, because a lot of times you delay because you can't do it well enough to suit you.
That's interesting. Maybe that's why I work so well under pressure, because I'm not doing it till the last second, and then miraculously it gets done.
It gets done. Yeah. I'm like that too, and I was a person who postponed it. If you'd asked me if I was a perfectionist, I would have been like, no, farthest thing from it. But I was. And that's what kept me from going a lot of places, because I couldn't do it well enough.
To your standards.
Yes, yeah. To my own standard.
Yeah, it's a dangerous slope to be on, honestly.
It is, and it's not possible. This is not a perfect world. It's a fallen world. And the more, you might as well just go beat your head on a cement wall as try to be a perfectionist.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, then the other side of that, at least for me, was that I would hold people to those same standards. And then I would feel so let down. I don't know, offended maybe is the right word, because they didn't do it the way that I thought it should be done, or the way I would hold myself to do it. And so then it becomes this whole snowball effect of, letdown and disappointment. And yes, there is no perfect, unfortunately.
No. The good news is often the bad news. So you can't get it perfect. And the good news is it doesn't matter.
Exactly. I like that better.
Confidence. I think the more, again, you tie your identity apart from what you do and more into your heart, who you are as a person, then I think that just brings confidence. You could say that about character as well. My daughter and I were talking today. She speaks Spanish, but she's really shy about speaking it. And she says, well, I don't want to make a mistake. And I'm like, but we're going to make mistakes. I mean, you can't learn something without making mistakes. And she goes, well, I said, are you worried what other people are going to think? And she's like, oh, no, I just don't want to get it wrong. And so even that phrase, it is about what other people think. And we don't even know these things. We have a different story about these. So I was just throwing that out there. And I said, well, what's your intention? She works in an ER hospital, and so she needs to communicate sometimes with people who speak Spanish. And she said, well, I'm just trying to help. And I said, yeah, that's the important part.
Exactly. Funny, I had a high school teacher always recite this definition of character. You know, it's like, who are you when someone's not looking? Maybe that's where I heard like seeking external approval. It's like, okay, someone's always watching you. Well, that's awesome though that she speaks Spanish.
She's a eager to please person. Yeah, she was my eager to please child, which sometimes those are the great children.
Is she the firstborn?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. There's something, too, that I'm telling you, Cyndi. Firstborn, not that second or third are not, but, you know, I'm finding more and more that those firstborns are have a certain type to them.
Yes, they do. Yeah, and they grew up with all adults, so they're often adults early on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
And they're eager to please. And then connection. Connection is so important, and we don't really connect well a lot of the times, especially with the people who mean the most to us, because we are hiding parts of ourselves. The more you can figure out yourself, be happy with yourself, be rejection proof. And by that I mean, if you don't reject you, which means you're going to have kindness, compassion, and understanding, whatever shows up, the more you can be that way, then you can be yourself anywhere, because you're kind of rejection proof. And you can start showing that to the people closest to you. I heard this recently. If we all operate in roles, mom, wife, child, songwriter, right? But you can't have relationship with roles. You can only have relationship with people. So again, the more we connect with ourselves in honesty, kindness, compassion, the more we can connect with people.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me, because I feel like for the longest time I was a stay-at-home mom, and that's how I define myself. I'm like, oh, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a nose wiper, you know, whatever the actions were. But I'm like, who am I as a person? Like, I don't know. I didn't know who I was, and I did lose my purpose there for quite a long time, which I think caused me to hate myself even more, because I just felt like I was floundering. So that makes so much sense.
I'm a lay counselor, so I don't have a licensure. But if people don't want to go in, they don't stay with me long. And I actually haven't lost a lot of people.
That's awesome.
But yeah, we're going to keep going in, because that's where the answers are.
It is. It really is.
And then caring. And again, this is my verse that I use with my people. They asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, soul, and strength. And then Jesus adds, the others like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these. So really, you have to learn how to love yourself before you can love people.
And even in other situations in life, you know, the flight attendants tell you, put your own mask on before you put someone else's mask on, because you're no good to anyone else if you're not right, mind, body, soul. So
exactly.
Something to that, you know.
There is. And I love, having grown up in church most of my life, all these answers to life are there.
They are.
But I didn't recognize them for what they were.
It's true. I think because it just kind of goes in one ear, not the other as a kid. You're just sitting there in church and you're like, okay, I'm here participating, but are you really fully participating? I think you don't really get that until you're an adult.
Yeah.
At least I didn't. So, yeah.
And we're not taught in church that we should love ourselves. We're taught we should love God. We're taught we should love others. But historically, they haven't done a good job of teaching us that we're supposed to love ourselves so that we can love others.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Cyndi, it's been so great having you join me today. Before I let you go, I wanted to see if you had any last words of wisdom that maybe are tucked in there that we didn't talk about that you'd like to share.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast where I've talked about this, but I'm so excited to have this opportunity.
Yay.
I would just say you're worth the effort. You're worth the time and commitment it will take to figure out who you are, to figure out who God created you. And through that, I have no doubt that you will discover amazing and wonderful things, not only about yourself, but about the life He's given you.
Love it.